Let's get started and talk about what is Azure. Azure is Microsoft's cloud platform, and it offers a variety of solutions that you can build upon. These include infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. You might also hear these referred to as IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, respectively. We're going to talk about each one of these solutions further throughout this course. We'll also talk about the multiple ways that you can log into Azure, as well as Azure Resource Manager, or ARM. This is the underlying platform that Microsoft Azure is built upon and managed. As we progress through this course, we'll talk about ARM and the various ways that we interface with it in order to manage our resources within Azure. So let's talk about how to access Azure. The first and most common way that a lot of people use is the Azure Portal. And this you can access by going to a web browser and going to portal.azure.com. It allows you to see all the resources, gives you access to the billing and security information, and it's also customizable, giving you the ability to mark the resources you use most frequently as favorites so they're easily accessible from within the portal. Another common one is Azure PowerShell. The advantage to Azure PowerShell is that is essentially PowerShell with the Azure modules installed. So all of your existing experience and knowledge that you have from using PowerShell, you can leverage within Azure PowerShell to manage those Azure resources more effectively. It's also cross-platform as of PowerShell Core 6. So this means whether you're running Linux, Windows, or Mac OS, you're going to be able to have very much a similar experience across each operating system. Another option is Azure CLI, and this is more of a bash-like interface, and again, it is also cross-platform. Between Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI, you're able to do many of the same tasks. We'll cover both examples as we progress through the course. A relatively new one is the Azure mobile app, and this is available on Android as well as iOS devices. It allows you to manage resources in a similar way that you would from the Azure Portal. It also offers Cloud Shell, which is a Azure PowerShell or Azure CLI interface from within the Azure Portal. So if you have a script saved under your Azure Cloud Shell profile, you're able to run that from the mobile app using, again, either PowerShell or CLI. So it gives you that ability to manage your resources when you might not have your laptop in front of you. And finally, Azure REST API. All of the resources we just got done talking about, the portal, PowerShell, Azure CLI, as well as the mobile app, are all just making calls to a REST API on the back end. So as we become more familiar with Azure, we can start to work with Azure, manipulate Azure using the REST API going forward. Now that we talked a little bit about how to access Azure, let's talk about resource groups and regions. Resource groups are a logical container that is used to hold related solutions. So this could mean if you've got an accounting application, you would logically group those together. The principle behind this is that it's lifecycle based. So that means as you create the resources, you create a resource group, you add the necessary components. Maybe you have some VMs for some compute power, you have SQL to store your data, and then you've got a network security group or an NSG in front of that to provide some network-based access control. You would group those together so that they are maintained, created, and destroyed at the same time. Additionally, you could put resource locks to prevent them from being deleted or manipulated. It can also help with resource tagging so that you can apply tags consistently to all the resources within the group. You can use RBAC or role-based access control to manage access and permissions to those resources. And also you have the option of exporting that resource group to a template. Ideally, you would group your resources together within a single resource group. Understandably, once you move into a more enterprise level environment, it might not be as easy, but it's always something to strive for as you work within Microsoft Azure. Moving on to regions. A region is a set of data centers within a geographical area. Microsoft has over 60 regions today and 160 data centers within those regions. Some considerations as you're deciding what region to deploy your resources in. From a compliance standpoint, whether it's a governing body or it's an internal policy where all of your data needs to be within a defined geographical region, when you create your resources in Azure, by selecting the appropriate regions, it helps ensure that your data is going to stay within that physical location. One of the considerations you want to make is that your resources are closer so that the network latency is lower. Another thing to keep in mind with this also is fault tolerance. So if you have all of your resources in one region and that region were to go offline, unfortunately your resources are going to be offline. So as you design your solution, you're going to want to make sure to keep in mind that you might have your resources deployed in more than one region to give you some fault tolerance if one were to go offline for whatever reason. Now that we've talked a little bit about Azure, how we can access it, and some of the components within it, let's log into the portal and let's see what we can do. So you can see here I've got a web browser pulled up, and I'm going to go ahead and just go to portal.azure.com. And this gives you the option to log into the Azure portal. If you don't already have an account, you can always go to azure.microsoft.com. You have the option to start a free Azure account. This gives you 30 days with a $200 credit to get logged into Azure and start playing with it. And you can follow along our entire course under that $200 credit. So let's close this out and go back to the Azure portal. You can see I've already got an existing email address that I've signed in with. So I'll select this. I'm going to enter my password. We're going to type it in correctly this time. And you guys are using MFA, right? So now that we're signed in to Azure Portal, you can see this is kind of the default landing page. You can see at the bottom we've got some resources that we have recently accessed, as well as we have some resource types or Azure services that we've also recently accessed up here. Additionally, you have your favorites menu on the left. You can have the services that you use most frequently. This way they're easily available no matter where you are within the portal. With that said, I want to go ahead and take a look at resource groups. So you can see we've got a resource group here called Demo Resource Group. We also have another one down below called Monitoring Resource Group, or RG. These are two examples of the resource groups, and these are individual items down here. We also have resource groups at the top, and this gives me all of the resource groups that are available within the subscription. Additionally, you can see we've got those for other services up here. Another extremely handy feature, in my opinion, is the search bar at top. You can see we can just start typing and resource group shows up. If, for example, we wanted to look at virtual machines, you could type virt and you can see it starts to show up. Or if you also just type VM, Azure's smart enough to realize that VM is synonymous with virtual machines. You can also do SQL, for example, so on and so forth. It is just very helpful because not only does it give you the services that match, it also gives you some of the resources that match. So let's go ahead and just type resource, and then we're going to select resource groups from the top. And you can see here now we have access to all of the resource groups that are available to us. What we're going to do to start with, though, is we're going to create our own resource group. So let's go ahead and click on Add. And once we do this, you can see it gives us the subscription to deploy the resource group to. In this instance, we've only have the one subscription, so we'll leave that at the default. We can give the resource group a name. So let's just call this one Demo RG001. And you can see it did give us, or did yell at us a minute ago, basically saying there's already a resource group with that same name in the subscription. So that's why we added the 001, so it's a unique name for that resource group. And now we also need to define the region that it's deployed to. And you can see we've got a number of choices here. For this instance, let's go ahead and just select Central US. When you select a location for a resource group, you're telling Azure where to store the metadata for that resource group. It is not a hard requirement for the resource group and the resource within it to be within the same region. That being said, if the majority of your resources are going to be in a given region, it makes sense to also have the resource group also be in that region. Again, not a hard requirement, but a good recommendation. Now let's click on tags. So for tags here, this is the metadata that we can assign to these. We're just going to go ahead and give this one. We've already got a tag name called Tech Contact out there for technical contact, and I'm just going to assign myself that tag value. We'll talk about that later. And now we're just going to go to review and create process. Basically it says passed. If we had any policies, for example, that prevented the resource group from being deployed in a given region or without the appropriate tags, that would be checked now. Again, this is something we'll talk about at a later time though. We're going to go ahead and select create. And now we can see we've got our first resource group's been successfully created. Do a refresh here. We can see our new resource group shows up. So we go ahead and open that up. You can see right now we don't have any resources within the group, but we do have the tag assigned here. So tech contact tag value is assigned to Joe Fecht. Now that we know how to access the Azure portal, we've also talked a little bit about creating a resource group and understanding the regions associated with it. Let's move on to the next lesson.